You are being watched, not by cameras, not by institutions, but by people. Every room you enter is an arena, a silent hierarchy where strength is measured, weakness is scented, and victims are selected without discussion. And whether you realize it or not, you have already been marked. Not because you are loud, not because you are arrogant, but because you leak. You leak reactions. You leak explanations. You leak discomfort. And in a world built on power, anything that leaks gets tested. You've felt it. That moment when a comment lands just slightly wrong, when a joke shrinks you in public, when a question is asked not to understand you, but to expose you, when the room goes quiet and all the eyes turn toward you, your body reacts before your mind does. Heat in the chest, tension in the jaw, that primitive urge to speak, to clarify, to fix. That urge is not courage. It is training. From childhood, you were conditioned for obedience, not dominance. You were taught that silence means guilt. That authority must be answered. That explanation equals safety. So now, every time someone tests you, your nervous system behaves like you're standing in front of a judge. And that is exactly how they see you. Machiavelli understood this without sentimentality. He did not care about fairness. He did not care about comfort. He observed men the way predators observe prey. And his conclusion was unforgiving. Those who reveal themselves are controlled. Those who explain themselves are managed. Those who react are owned. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you actually are. And when you show the world everything, you leave yourself with nothing. No mystery, no armor, no leverage. This is why you keep getting tested. Not because people are cruel, but because your behavior invites evaluation. Every explanation you offer becomes evidence. Every emotional reaction becomes a wound. Every attempt to defend yourself becomes an admission that the frame belongs to someone else. You think the test is about respect. It isn't. It's about hierarchy. The moment you respond too quickly, you step into a courtroom you did not build. You accept the role of defendant. You allow someone else to decide what must be proven. A king does not justify his presence. A predator does not explain its intent. They either act or they remain still. Silence is not weakness. It is a void. And the void terrifies people who rely on control. When you don't react the way they expect, something breaks inside them. Their script collapses. Their confidence leaks. They begin to fill the space you refuse to occupy. They talk more. They justify themselves. They reveal motive. Without raising your voice, you reverse the hunt. But here is the warning most people aren't ready for. This shift will cost you comfort. Power isolates. Truth is uncomfortable. When you stop reacting, you will feel exposed, misunderstood, judged. Every instinct in you will scream to repair the moment, to explain, to soften, to be liked again. That instinct is the leash. And if this is already making you uncomfortable, that's not a flaw. If this hurts, Machiavelli would say, it is because part of you fears it is true, because the truth is simple and unforgiving. If you continue as you are, you will keep shrinking, keep explaining, keep being tested. But if you learn the habit that ends this pattern, the hierarchy shifts permanently, not because you become louder, not because you become cruel, but because there is suddenly nothing left to push against. And once people realize they cannot move you, they stop trying. That is where this begins. The moment you stop reacting, the tests don't disappear. They change shape. People don't pull back immediately. They lean in. Because when a pattern breaks, the first response is pressure. They need to know whether the silence was accidental or intentional. This is where most people fail. They mistake stillness for the end of the conflict. They relax. They leak afterward. They explain themselves later. They justify to a third party. They narrate what happened to regain comfort. That single act restores the old hierarchy, because power isn't lost in confrontation. It's lost in disclosure. Every test is an audit, not of your morality, of your containment. When someone delays you, they are watching what you do with uncertainty. When someone mocks you, they are watching what you do with shame. When someone questions you publicly, they are watching what you do with exposure. And most people rush to relieve themselves. They talk. They overcorrect. They apologize for things they didn't do. They believe they're being mature. What they're actually doing is bleeding in open air. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that the most dangerous wound is not visible. It's informational. Once someone knows what unsettles you, they don't need force. They apply pressure in precise places. That's why silence works, only when it's clean. Silence without inner stability is just fear. And fear is loud, even when you say nothing. If your body tightens, if your eyes search for approval, if your mind rehearses explanations, they feel it. People test states, not words. They're not reacting to what you say. They're reacting to what you need. And need is readable. This is the uncomfortable layer no one teaches you. As long as you need to be understood, you are controllable. As long as you need to be liked, you are adjustable. As long as you need the moment to resolve, you are testable. That need was installed early. As a child, unresolved tension was dangerous. Misunderstanding led to punishment. Silence meant guilt. So you learned to speak quickly, explain clearly, fix the atmosphere. That conditioning kept you safe then. Now it keeps you small. Adult power does not operate on parental rules. There is no judge, no verdict. There is only interaction and response. And the one who absorbs discomfort loses. When someone tests you and you react, you absorb it for them. When you rush to explain, you carry their tension. When you try to smooth the moment, you take responsibility for their behavior. That is why the tests repeat. Pressure is applied where it is rewarded. Remove the reward, and the behavior starves. But understand this clearly. The habit you are learning is not silence. It is non-attachment to outcome. You stop needing the other person to behave differently so you can feel stable. You allow misunderstanding to exist. You allow discomfort to linger. You allow the room to stay uneven. This feels dangerous because it removes your familiar tools, but it creates something far more powerful. Ambiguity. Ambiguity destabilizes those who rely on control. When you don't rush to clarify, the other person starts talking. They explain. They backpedal. They reveal motive. You didn't confront them. You didn't accuse them. You simply didn't carry what wasn't yours. And slowly, without drama, the evaluation reverses. They start watching themselves. This is the shift. You are no longer the one being measured. They are. But this only holds if you don't flinch later. If you don't narrate afterward. If you don't seek validation once the pressure passes. Because the moment you leak, the hunt resumes. If this feels harsh, that's because it is. If this hurts, remember, it's because part of you fears it's true. The habit costs comfort. It costs reassurance. It costs belonging. But it buys something permanent. You stop being easy to read, easy to move, easy to test. And once people realize you cost more than you give, they change their behavior. Not out of respect, out of survival. By now, you've probably noticed something unsettling. The world didn't suddenly become kinder. People didn't magically gain respect. What changed was subtler. They started hesitating. And hesitation is the first crack in control. This is where the habit moves from external behavior to internal architecture. Because the real threat was never how others treated you. It was how quickly you treated yourself as guilty. Every test only works if you accept one silent assumption that you owe a response. That assumption is the chain. When someone challenges you and you feel compelled to answer, what you're really doing is putting yourself on trial. You're weighing words, editing tone, choosing explanations that might restore balance. You're not defending truth. You're negotiating status. And negotiation always favors the one who needs resolution less. This is why some people can say very little and still dominate a room. Not because they are smarter, but because nothing in them is scrambling. They are not calculating outcomes. They are not hoping to be perceived correctly. They are not trying to win. They are already finished inside. This is the point most people misunderstand. Silence is not what scares others. Completion is. When there is nothing left in you that needs the moment to go a certain way, people feel it. Your stillness stops being passive. It becomes heavy. And heavy things don't get pushed easily. But getting here requires something uncomfortable. You have to confront why tests ever worked on you in the first place. The answer is not weakness. It's conditioning. You were trained to associate worth with response. To believe that being challenged required clarification. To feel that unanswered tension meant danger. That belief system creates reflex, and reflex creates predictability. Predictability is blood in the water. Predators don't attack what they don't understand. They attack what reacts the same way every time. That's why tests repeat. Once someone learns that a raised eyebrow makes you speak, that silence makes you uncomfortable. That accusation pulls explanations out of you. They don't stop. Not because they enjoy cruelty, but because the pattern works. Breaking the pattern requires you to sit inside the very sensations you were trained to escape. The heat, the quiet, the exposure. And to do nothing. Not perform nothing, not force restraint, but genuinely allow the discomfort to exist without interpretation. This is where the shadow appears. Because when you stop defending yourself, you are left alone with the accusation. True or false? If it's false, silence costs you nothing. If it's partially true, silence forces you to face it privately instead of begging for reassurance publicly. Either way, you gain sovereignty. This is the pivot. You stop outsourcing self-evaluation. You no longer need others to confirm who you are. You no longer rush to correct impressions. You no longer bleed information to feel safe. And the moment that need dissolves, something irreversible happens. People lose their entry points. No emotional spikes. No visible wounds. No obvious levers. You become smooth. And smooth surfaces don't offer grip. This is why tests feel weaker now. Not because people respect you more, but because they don't know where to push. They try indirectly. They circle. They watch. And when nothing moves, they retreat. Quietly. Not defeated. Recalibrated. Because engaging you has become expensive. This is the stage where you realize something most never do. You weren't tested because you lacked power. You were tested because you leaked it. And now that the leak is sealed, the pressure has nowhere to go. If this shift feels isolating, that's not a mistake. It's the cost of internal independence. You are no longer participating in the emotional economy. You are no longer trading reactions for peace. You are standing intact. And intact people change the balance of any room without effort. This is not the end of the process. It's the point where the habit stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like identity. And once identity changes, behavior follows without instruction. That's when testing begins to feel unnecessary, because there is nothing left to test. By now, the shift has settled into your body. You're no longer counting pauses. You're no longer reminding yourself not to react. You're no longer managing silence. It's simply there. And this is where the tests become more sophisticated. You stopped feeding reactions. You stopped outsourcing your self-evaluation. So the pressure changed direction. People don't confront you the same way anymore. They probe indirectly. They circle instead of striking, because direct testing only works on people who still scramble. Now the tests are quieter. A casual question disguised as concern. A third-party comment meant to extract context. A friendly check-in that isn't friendly at all. This is where most people undo everything. They survived the confrontation. They held the frame. They stayed still. And then afterward they relaxed. They explained themselves privately. They justified to someone safe. They narrated the situation to release tension. That moment is fatal. Power is rarely lost in conflict. It's lost in relief. When the pressure passes, and you feel the urge to decompress, to be understood, to unload, that's when you hand the map back. Because information doesn't lose its power when shared softly. It loses its power when shared at all. Machiavelli warned that familiarity erodes authority faster than resistance ever could. Hatred keeps distance. Familiarity invites access. And access is what makes testing possible. This is why the habit must extend beyond silence under fire. It must govern what you reveal when no one is attacking you. Your doubts, your frustrations, your interpretations, your internal debates. Each one feels harmless. Each one is not. Every detail you share teaches others how to position themselves around you, how to predict you, how to pressure you later. The sealed person does not explain themselves when the danger is gone, because the explanation was never necessary in the first place. They do not narrate their inner world. They do not seek witnesses for their discipline. They do not trade clarity for comfort. They act, and they let others live with uncertainty. Uncertainty is heavier than explanation. When people don't know where they stand with you, they project their own fears, their own hierarchies, their own limitations. Some assume competence, some assume danger, Some assume authority. Very few assume weakness. This is the stage where silence stops being a tactic and becomes posture. You stop asking, "Should I say something?" and start asking, "Does this deserve access?" Most things don't. Most questions don't. Most provocations don't. Most misunderstandings don't. You notice how much of your old life was spent granting access automatically, answering questions that weren't earned, clarifying moods that weren't yours to manage, explaining decisions to people who had no stake in them. That reflex is gone. What replaces it is selectivity. Cold, clean, effortless. You speak when it matters. You engage when it counts. You correct only when the cost of silence is higher than the cost of exposure. And because that threshold is high, you speak rarely. This changes how people orient themselves around you. They slow down. They choose words carefully. They hesitate before assuming. Not because they fear you, but because they can't locate you. They don't know what moves you. They don't know what you need. They don't know what story you're telling yourself. So they stop testing. Not consciously, instinctively. There is a cost to this stage. You feel less mirrored, less soothed, more alone in rooms. Small talk feels empty. Oversharing feels invasive. This is the isolation Machiavelli understood. Not rejection, separation. You are no longer exchanging vulnerability for belonging. You are standing intact, and intact people don't invite pressure. They absorb it. At this point, tests don't aim to control you anymore. They aim to locate others in relation to you. And when you give no reference points, hierarchy settles quietly. No arguments, no scenes. Just distance where there used to be access. This is the calm before the final lock. Because once selectivity becomes natural, something deeper happens. You stop needing the world to make sense of you. And that changes everything. You're no longer managing yourself. You're no longer restraining impulses. You're no longer choosing silence. Silence chose you. That's the final line. Because what you've built is not a habit anymore. It's a position. You no longer enter interactions looking for stability. You arrive stable, and stability does something dangerous to social systems. It removes leverage. Most people move through the world negotiating their inner state. They trade explanations for peace, reactions for relief, vulnerability for temporary belonging. You don't. You stop paying that price. And once you stop paying, the system stops offering you transactions. This is why testing truly ends here. Not because people suddenly respect you, but because there is nothing left to extract. No reactions to harvest. No emotions to provoke. No narratives to destabilize. You are not defending an identity anymore. You are inhabiting one. This is the part Machiavelli never needed to explain. Power is not domination. It is non-availability. When you stop explaining yourself, your mind quiets, not emptiness, finality. You stop replaying conversations. Stop rehearsing what you should have said. Stop arguing with people who aren't even present. That inner noise was the real weakness. And once it dies, something else changes. Your posture settles. Your breathing slows. Your presence thickens. You don't command rooms. Rooms adjust to you. People feel it immediately. They don't know if you approve or disapprove. They don't know if you're amused or indifferent. They don't know where they stand. And because humans crave certainty, they behave cautiously. They soften language. They hesitate before pushing. They test less. Not out of fear, out of instinct. Because uncertainty is expensive. And you offer no discounts. Here is the final paradox. You didn't become dangerous by learning how to respond better. You became dangerous by learning how to not respond at all. You removed yourself from the emotional economy. No more trading explanations for calm. No more trading reactions for acceptance. No more trading access for relevance. You stopped bleeding. This comes with a cost. Few people are willing to pay. You are no longer easily liked. No longer easily read. No longer easily accessed. But you are solid. And solidity attracts deference without asking. This is not arrogance. Arrogance still needs validation. This is sovereignty. You no longer manage perception. You let perception collide with something whole. At this stage, testing doesn't vanish completely. It mutates. People don't test you to control you anymore. They test to locate themselves in relation to you. And when you give them nothing to measure against, they adjust. Some adapt upward. Some drift away. Both outcomes are clean. Your world simplifies. Noise fades. Drama thins. Interactions become deliberate. Only those who can stand without leaning remain. This is not loneliness. It's filtration. And once you experience this level of internal closure, you understand something that cannot be unlearned. Most of what you said in the past was never required. Most of what you explained was never necessary. Most of what you defended was never under real threat. You were just trained to leak. That training is gone now. What replaces it is not hardness, it's completion. You don't need to prove who you are. You don't need to correct misunderstandings. You don't need to win frames. You exist, and the world adjusts. That is why they stop testing you. Not because you fought back, but because there is nothing left to push against. If something in you has been quiet while listening to this, not excited, not emotional, just settled, you already know what this means. Crossing this line isn't motivation. It's a decision. And once you make it, there is no returning to the version of you that needed to be understood. If you're done being readable, done being managed by reactions, done playing roles designed for weaker versions of you, then you don't need encouragement. You already crossed the line. And that's the point.